Hello everybody, I'm Madame Sensei. I teach Spanish, French, and Japanese out here in the beautiful Pacific Northwest to high schoolers. And today I'm going to talk about how I use Minecraft education for an assessment on matching adjectives to nouns. Now once again, just to remind you, the goal is not to use Minecraft. This is not a class about using Minecraft. The goal is to use language. And Minecraft is just a way to apply that language. And I tell my students constantly that it's pointless to do this if you're not speaking in the target language. If they don't speak in the target language, then I'm just going to go to something else. You know, I've got 100 million other tricks up my sleeve to get them to speak in the target language. I don't have to do this. Students are 100% invested though, so I've never had a problem. So once again, set the students up for success. Make sure that they know how to talk about Minecraft if they're going to be using Minecraft. And then you can move on to your application. And I've got a whole video about that. All right, for this one, I'm going to switch to my big book for a moment and show you how we were talking about the rules of the French garden. Because we wanted to match colors to objects. Because matching adjectives to nouns is an important thing in any Romance language. So I always have to remind the students to take notes. For some reason, they don't want to take notes. And we started off just looking at some pictures. You know, what do you see here? And students were pretty quick to point out that there's water. Okay. Here they recognize the word cheval for horses, but they didn't know the word for statue, so I had to teach them that. Eventually they started trying to talk about the circles, but they didn't know the word cercle yet, so that was good to introduce that. All right. So I showed them basically some famous gardens we started with. Here they were able to point out more water. More water. They knew the word for fountain because they often asked to go to the water fountain to get a drink. Castle, they knew the word for. Okay. Here they just talked about how green it was. They knew the word for tree, but they hadn't learned the word for bushes yet. So that was good. Here, they talked about the colors that they saw. And then more, they talked about the water again, and circle at this point. And they knew the word for maze, labyrinth, right? And they talked about the colors and more colors. So I showed them a few famous stuff. And here, they're starting to notice that there's a castle in all of them. Okay, here again, they talked about the water and the building here, and they started wanting to talk about squares. Keep pushing them to talk in the target language. Don't let them speak in English. Let them ask you, comment dit-on blah, blah, blah en français, but don't let them have the whole sentence in English. All right, so then I gave them the rules that the French garden is precise and regulated and formal, and it's classic and beautiful, of course, and that all the paths lead to the house. The house is the most important thing in the garden, and you can always see the house from the garden. So we went over the shapes, and we learned the word for bushes, and we learned the word for topiary, and a lot of my students didn't understand what topiaries were, and I thought that was very interesting. So I had to run to the other side of the classroom and grab a scissors and pretend to be pruning bushes and stuff so that they would understand what a topiary was. We talked about fountains and basins with all the water and everything. And then we talked about how the colors are simple. And I think this was the hardest thing for them because they really wanted to put a lot of color in their gardens. But we kept coming back to the colors of a French garden are very, very simple, very choose a color and stick with it. Don't put in 5 colors. We talked about the most popular colors in the garden. We talked about lavender, which is very popular up here in the Pacific Northwest too. Then we had a really good section that I liked where we just compared, hey, this is an English garden. This is a French garden. Quelle est la différence? What do you see? What's the difference? Okay. And you know, this was hard for them because they really wanted the yes/no questions, right? We talked about how the English garden is less organized and it's easier to take care of and it's costs less money. All right, then we talked about a Japanese garden versus a French garden. And we talked about how Japanese garden has to seem like it's always been there forever, as if, and look, I've got a typo here, as if nature has created the garden. Okay, and then we talked about a Chinese garden versus a French garden. And the Chinese garden represents cosmos in miniature. So at this point, they're really getting into it. Okay, they're talking about the water. They're talking about the colors that they see. And my favorite part was when I showed them the Italian garden, and then they just kind of stopped dead. And then they started saying, oh, well, the Italian garden has squares. And I just had to like Vanna White my way over here, you know. Oh, the Italian garden has water. Okay, so I had to show them over here. And they're like, wait a minute. Then I said, okay, well, the French garden comes from the Italian garden. It draws inspiration from the Italian garden. I had to describe topiaries again because they didn't understand topiaries. But that the French garden is about imposing order on nature. And pointing out that nobody in France is going to call it a French garden. They're going to call it a regular garden, normal garden, right? It's just more about the laws and stuff. And then we went over all the rules, okay? And then I gave them their assignment is they have to make a French garden. So let me go back to the other one now. I gave them a printout, a worksheet. And because my students kind of get stressed if I tell them they're going to be speaking in the target language for the entire hour and 20 minutes, they can do that when we're making crepes. They can do that when we're making tortillas. They can do that when we're making miso shiro. But for some reason, I don't know, it's too much of a cognitive demand. So generally I work up to it. For this particular one, since it's early in the year, I'm like, we're going to be in 5 minutes in French and then 5 minutes in English, and I'll let you go back and forth. But you know, 5 minutes. Here's the timer. Stay in French. Okay, now you can speak in English for 5 minutes, and they can handle that just fine. I always have a bit of metacognition at the beginning and the end of all my assignments. Okay, do you think you're ready for this? And then write down the guiding principles, and then write me some sentences. Okay. What are you planning to do? What colors are you planning to use? What kind of topiaries are you going to make? Whatever. Give just me 5 sentences about it. And then, of course, I give them a word bank, and it's a living word bank. And I ran out of space on my paper, so I just went on the other side. So I didn't have to make it too many sheets long. But it's a living word bank, so I'll add to it as the students ask me. Como dit-on blah, blah, blah. Okay, and then I give them a little plot map, and oh, I didn't even do that very well, huh? So that if some students like to plan ahead of time, some students don't. They just want to dive right in. I want to have them write down their lot number. Okay. All right, so here we are in one of my French classes' gardens, and I don't know why they put cows here, but it's all symmetrical. They had to follow the rules, and they had to write that sheet of paper. What rules they were following and what colors they were using, and they have to match the adjectives to the nouns, which is very important in any Romance language, which is really what I wanted them to do, was match adjectives to nouns and be able to read our little story about French gardens. So they really went to town. They love it. They're not even done yet. This one decided to make it 2 stories. That's fine as long as he follows the rules. This one's not done yet. But they're loving this so much they want to go back to their gardens. They feel a real ownership over their gardens. Look at that, beautiful, beautiful. This was the castle that I built that they had to keep in view for all their gardens. So of course we'll walk around and make sure that the house is the main focal point of the gardens. Here's a lot that didn't get claimed. A couple lots didn't get claimed. So you see I wrote the numbers in ice so that the students would break the numbers. And then this is a work in progress. They're not done with it yet. It's going to be perfect and beautiful. But I'm just really proud of how well they read the story. They had to put a sniffer in. They like sniffers. I'm proud of how well they read the story and understood the story about what a French garden is and what are the rules that that govern the French garden. And their writing has been pretty good as I look over their worksheets. It's pretty darn good. They're matching their adjectives to their nouns. And really, that's all I care about. And the conversations they're having while they build this are pretty amazing. They're staying in the target language, and I filmed my kids, and somehow the file is corrupted, so I can't let you hear it. But wow, they're having like really good conversations with each other in the target language, and at the end, that's all I care about. So that is our French garden assignment. Then once the students are done with their gardens, and yeah, you're going to have to set a deadline because otherwise they'll never be done. So, this shouldn't take more than one period, maybe 1.5, okay? Then you pass out the second sheet of paper and then randomly give them a number. I have like index cards with numbers written on them, and all the, they used to be train stations for a different world, but then I changed it to paths instead of train tracks. So I have numbers on all of those little kiosk station thingies. So they should find the number that's on their card. And then they get to look at that person's garden and describe how that garden follows the rules of the French garden. Okay, and I give them a sentence frame if they'd like, but they don't have to use it. And then I ask them to describe the garden overall using 3 complete sentences from the viewpoint of whatever skin they're wearing, because they love doing that. That's so much fun. It's good for your writing. And then I'll give them a metacognition question at the end, let you shade in the bar for how well you think you did. What are you going to do next time to make sure that you're even more successful? What are you going to do to make sure you retain these words? Questions like that. So I'll have my template world and other worlds also on Minecraft Education. And if you want to help me build worlds, I would absolutely love that. I love to collaborate. Ping me at studio-nemo.com or the Minecraft Education Ambassadors or the Minecraft Teachers Lounge, or I also hang out at the Duolingo Educators Network. So I hope to see you in one of those places.